This year is about as good as time as any to become a PC gamer. The prices for PC components are pretty low, especially the SSDs. You just can't get through PC gaming without having SSDs. In 2018, it is an absolute requirement for PC gaming these days. And of course, you have tons and tons of library on the PC gaming market, especially if you count all the emulators. That is assuming that Nintendo hasn't banned all of the ROMs and emulators. And if you're one of those people who enjoy visual novels and hentai games, the PC will give you tons and tons of options for your degenerate needs, except Steam. Steam is unreliable as hell. While it does have 18 plus games on the platform, you cannot trust Steam to have your ecchi games to be in there, even if your games are not ecchi at all. I've talked about this in another video, but I think this is as good as time as any to talk about the censorship of many other things outside of Steam. And believe me, there are tons, and there are tons who are pretty freaking major. But before we go on any further, I want to say huge thanks to Magma Fox, Shin Ryuji, and James for the pledges on Patreon. You guys are fantastic. Also, huge thanks to Zachary, Paulo, Patrick, and KNK Crafts for the donations of PayPal. You guys are also fantastic. Let's talk about a couple of news updates on Valve's Lowly Police. A developer mentioned off record that they're going to further scrutinize games that take place in high school settings, and that the policy for Valve banning games featuring school setting has not yet been made public. One of the games being banned is an erotic visual novel named My Bullied Bride. It's quite interesting that Valve specifically wants games that take place in high school to be banned, especially considering that you can still buy Bully Scholarship Edition on Steam right now for 65% off. Anyway, a visual novel blogger named Sana posted DM messages between Twitter users Star Kitsune and Jane, an artist working at Valve. You might notice that certain games can be reported for many things, including child exploitation. It can be reported for other things that are more legitimate, like fraud, legal violation, game being broken. Jeez, I wish people could use that more. Adult content, harmful or defamatory, but the one key point that needs to be focused on here is child exploitation. The problem with this definition is that we don't really know what Steam considers to be child exploitation. Unlike the descriptors of the other reasons, which are pretty freaking crystal clear for me, the child exploitation one is pretty vague. And the reason why it's vague is because Steam doesn't really specify if the children in question are fictional children or real life children. It's interesting that Steam has child exploitation as its own category of reasons of reporting a game. Did you know that almost every modern Fallout or Elder Scrolls games can be modded to have killable children? Does Steam also considers fictional children to be child exploitation? These games still exist on the platform, by the way. If the reason why they banned the Key to Home despite having zero lewd content is because of child exploitation, that's a really stupid freaking reason. I can play any Hitman game, Valve, and exploit the game's capabilities of reenacting the Las Vegas shooting. This leads us to a game called Nipleheim's Hunter that doesn't have any 18 plus content on the base game, and they can be added as DLC later on. But despite all of this, the developers are told by Steam that they have to remove a lowly character in the game even after all of the censorship. It's a rather insane demand from Steam to straight up remove a character from the game. Imagine if this character is someone who is important for the story. Imagine being told by Valve that you have to remove this character because the character looks like a child and we don't want you naughty people to exploit them. Oh, no. You have to do tons of rewrites to the story just to make sure that Steam finds your content acceptable for consumption. I'm really not kidding when I say that publishing these sorts of games on Steam would restrict your creative freedom. You can definitely get more publicity with these games on Steam, but is it really worth it that you have to cut the game's content down? There are many other Steam alternatives out there that would let you publish these sorts of games completely uncensored. Maybe even the new Epic Game Store would let you to publish these games uncensored. Very unlikely, but we don't know. The future is limitless and anything can happen. From the story so far, Steam is pretty much going to rain hell upon games that have a school setting and characters that look young because child exploitation, despite these characters being completely fictional and they don't exist. They even cited Washington State's obscenity law as a justification for banning these sorts of games, despite these characters being completely fictional and doesn't have anything to do with that law. If you're gonna make the argument that lowly-centric games might encourage pedophilia, fine, but to say that a game is exploiting children when they're clearly fictional characters is absolutely disingenuous. If we're gonna talk about child exploitation, I'd be more concerned about games that have micropayments or loot boxes, because they actually do exploit real-life children, Valve. But here's the thing, Steam. Even if your excuse is that these games do not comply with the law, you have tons and tons of games on Steam with young-looking characters that can be uncensored to reach a certain stimulating effect for those filthy lolicons. One of which is a visual novel called If My Heart Had Wings, 75% off on Steam right now. This visual novel is still on Steam and it features 2 loli characters that you can totally date. Not to diss If My Heart Had Wings, I think it's a pretty solid visual novel with solid waifu options, but this is a game where you can have either of the twin lolis as your dating options. And not only that, but as I did my research to the CGs of this game, it is absolutely possible for you to have a twin loli threesome sex. I am not kidding. This game is in your store Steam and it receives very positive reviews. Not only that, but it is absolutely required for you to have the uncensored version of the game because it also contains a much better translation job. Does anybody get hurt? No. Do any children got hurt? No. If you want to talk about children being hurt, let's talk about pretty much any game that has microtransactions on Steam right now. Niplheim Hunter is one of the games that got delayed indefinitely thanks to Steam's really slow approval process of this game. The developer even used my last video to illustrate what happened, which is quite surprising. Another game is called Victory Project, with the Steam release delayed indefinitely because Valve doesn't respond to any of the game developers' messages. This would definitely halt the progress of a lot of game developers who just wanted to develop games and sell them to make profit. Valve said that they're gonna make a statement from this entire mess, but 1, they said that almost 2 weeks ago, and 2, they promised to make a statement around a week ago. Regardless, we can see the policy in effect. Tons of ecchi or hentai games that have a school setting or young-looking characters would be banned. And when they're not, they would tell you to remove these characters because, well, someone on Valve doesn't like it. Some game developers had enough of this nonsense and they decided, you know what, let's make our own digital store. And that's exactly what Top Hat Studios did. They make their own digital store for these sorts of games. I hope they are successful in their endeavors and allow more game developers to freely express their art on the video games medium. But ladies and gentlemen, the story of censorship and bannings of lewd content doesn't stop there. From my previous video, I think you all have heard about the Shimoneta Dystopia that will come soon enough for all of the US-based websites, a policy that will bring ruins upon pretty much a lot of lewd content hosted in US-based websites, a policy that was way too late for us to stop. Sad to inform this to you all, but it is happening, and the impact is going to get worse and worse. Let's talk about the banning of Artstation from the Android app. The reason why it's banned from the App Store is because there are a couple of sexually suggestive images on the website that went past the already strict Artstation's adult filter. Google apparently has a rule preventing apps to have sexually explicit content, but that's really weird because the article then went on to talk about how Reddit and Instagram have posted images that are far worse than the Artstation images used as examples, once again highlighting the hypocrisy of a lot of these platforms. The appeal to restore the app on the Play Store is unfortunately rejected, and that's why they're not on the Google Play Store anymore. We're not done yet, ladies and gentlemen. We have more censorship stories coming in. Zyon, a music rhythm game removed from Google Play until the developers censor the female characters. Why? Because Google wants to cover its cleavage. Yeah, that's one hell of a demand. But surprisingly enough, they are going to release the PC version of the game called Invaxion on Steam with a possible 18+ DLC later on. So, good on you, Steam? But ladies and gentlemen, amongst all of the censorship news that we've been talking about for the past couple of minutes, there's nothing more horrifying than this following news. Hentai Haven is going down. Sayonara, Hentai Haven. You've done an absolutely amazing job contributing on the lewdness of this world. From what I've read, the shutdown of Hentai Haven is apparently due to a lack of funding instead of the brand new lewd content policies that are being talked about just recently. And no, it's not caused by the developers wanting to buy fursuits. That was an old April Fool's joke if you guys missed it. But regardless of the reasons, as Hentai Haven suggested, there are definitely alternatives out there that will provide more content and better content for all of you guys. There are even already suggestions popping out. Is this the end for all the lewd contents around the world? No, definitely not. There will be lewd contents everywhere as long as human beings exist and they can use the internet. There will be places where you can host them without government intervention. There will be places where these things can exist peacefully and people can enjoy them just fine. When the government comes in and tries to take away all your wonderful content, the SOX rebellion is inevitable. Steam's censorship towards lowly content or high school content isn't the end of the world. There will be other alternatives where you can post your games with little to no restrictions, and if there isn't one, people will make it. It's kind of like Rule 35, the one rule that not a lot of people talked about, even though it is about as equally important. And that is the power of the internet. This is the power that made the internet to be what it is, a never-ending machine that produces lewd content for everyone to enjoy. I understand that the news have been rather depressing for a lot of content creators out there, especially those who want to make edgy content. I understand that the future looks pretty bleak for all of you people out there who enjoy lewd content. But I don't think all of you need to worry, because if there's one thing that I can definitely say amongst all of this nonsense is that you are not the only one who are fed up with this nonsense. If you are powerless to stop pretty much a lot of the things happening around the world, if you have little to no power to prevent the good things from being ruined, you are not the only person who are bothered by it. There will always be someone fighting alongside you. There will always be people who are sick of this nonsense and will try their hardest to do what's right. This isn't to say that you shouldn't fight. Absolutely not. You should. You can keep up the fight against the bannings of lewd content by telling people about it. Talk about them on any of your social media. Share any sorts of information that you can find to anyone. Not just me, anyone. We probably won't be going full-blown SOX, but we will still tell people about these news. We will still be telling people about the hypocrisy, the double standards, and the invasion of either ideologues or governmental power for all of the things that you love. With this video and many other videos to come, and even something as small as my daily tweets, I have done my part to spread the news. I will keep doing it, and hopefully, so will you.